Weird fantasy. My life simulator 1 Chapter 1 Beginning. The cold wind is like a sharp knife, and the streets are a little bit deserted in this cold winter. There are only 2 and 3 hawkers, still wrapped in clothing, squatting on the side of the road. Looking at the scene in the street, Luo Hao also showed a sense of helplessness in his eyes. The cold wind in the air caused Luo Hao to shudder, and walked into a restaurant with the firewood on his back. It has been 2 years since coming into this world. Luo Hao has been completely integrated from the original unacceptable. In this world that reveals the style of the Republic of China everywhere, it is basically settled down. After entering the restaurant, Luo Hao walked all the way to the courtyard inside the restaurant. This is Luo Hao's current work in this world. A firewood farmer at the bottom of society, every day by going to the mountains to cut firewood and then selling it to these restaurants in exchange for some copper plates. The shopkeeper is a bit unsatisfied with the firewood you sent in the past 2 days. There is always some dear wood, and there are complaints in the kitchen. When Luo Hao just walked into the courtyard, an old man dressed like a small servant walked out. He said to Luo Hao in dissatisfaction, "Uncle, he can't help it. It's winter. Where is there so much dry wood on the mountain? Luchai is the best he can cut down at this time." Luo Hao's face also showed a little helplessness. Luchai was much worse than ordinary dry firewood, but there was really no way. After all, in such a humid winter, it is basically impossible to have dry wood on the mountain. Anyway, if it's still Luchai tomorrow, the price will definitely be suppressed. Xiao Hao, think of a solution for yourself. There is only so much I can help. Uncle, he sighed deeply, took out several copper plates from his pocket and handed them to Luo Hao. "I know, Uncle He, then I'll go back first." Luo Hao smiled at the old man, and did not blame Uncle He for what he said in his heart. The job of own was introduced by Uncle He. Otherwise, Luo Hao, a 14-year-old boy, would normally not be willing to hire him. It is very difficult to find a stable job in this town. Looking at the copper plates in his hand, Luo Hao smiled at the corner of his mouth and walked towards the bun shop opposite the restaurant. "Boss. 4 steamed buns, thank you." "Okay, I'm an old customer, so just give 3 copper plates." To the owner of the bun shop, Luo Hao is no longer a raw face, and basically buys steamed buns from him every 1 or 2 days. The business is still relatively warm. Luo Hao also smiled and thanked him, counted 3 copper plates and handed them to the boss. The steamed bun wrapped in oil paper, and the steamed bun just out of the steamer, still carries a touch of heat. Luo Hao, who was wearing a thin coat, felt a warmth. He warmed his body, which was already freezing and stiff, a little bit. Holding the steamed bun in his arms, Luo Hao walked quickly towards the house. Through the messy alleys along the way, Luo Hao finally walked into a street full of flat wooden houses. There was a stinky smell everywhere in the street, with rotten food, sweat, and various foul smells mixed together. It's just like the smell of a water channel, and most people will feel nauseous when smelling it. This place is the slum in this town, and the people who live in it are usually poor people and beggars. Of course, there are more beggars than poor people like Luo Hao. Every winter, many people in this place freeze to death and starve to death. They will not be discovered until the beginning of spring. Holding the steamed bun in his arms, Luo Hao walked directly into a courtyard and gently knocked on the dilapidated wooden door in front of him. "Who?" A naive voice came from the other side of the door. "Xiaoying is me, open the door." Hearing this immature voice, Luo Hao's face turned blue from the cold wind gradually revealed a smile. Squeak! After the wooden door was slowly opened, a small head poked out from the crack in the door. With a chubby face and big crystal clear eyes, Luo Hao is a typical baby-faced little loli in Luo Hao's previous life. After seeing Luo Hao, he gradually opened the wooden door. "Big brother, why did you come back so early today?" Xiaoying obediently took the bamboo basket and sickle on Luo Hao's back, and turned her head to look at Luo Hao. This girl is a little beggar Luo Hao met in a slum shortly after coming to this world. Luo Hao, who just came to this world, has no life skills because his parents died early. Once in the slum, she passed out of hunger, but Xiaoying gave Luo Hao half of the steamed bun she was begging for. There may not have been this half of the steamed bun at the beginning, and it is estimated that Luo Hao had frozen to death in the street long ago. "The fog on the mountain hasn't cleared yet, so I didn't wait much. I bought steamed bun, eat it while it's hot." Luo Hao looked at the well-behaved girl in front of him, smiled slightly, and took the steamed bun out of his arms. The steamed bun was still warm because Luo Hao was in his arms along the way. After seeing the steamed bun, Xiaoying did not rush to eat. After looking at the number of steamed buns in the oiled paper, I just broke half of the steamed buns, and then put the remaining steamed buns back into Luo Hao's hands. Big brother has been busy all day, eat more. Xiaoying didn't do anything today, so just eat half of it. While talking, Xiaoying tore the warm steamed bun in her hand into small pieces and stuffed them into her mouth. I ate one before I came back. These 4 of us will be enough for 1.5 of us. If you don't have enough food on such a cold day, it will be cold at night. Luo Hao shook his head, put the oil paper on the table, grabbed 2 steamed buns with white flour, and walked aside. She stuffed her mouth into her mouth, not giving Xiaoying any reason to refuse. Xiaoying didn't refuse anymore. The two started drinking water from the creek and finished eating 2 big steamed buns. After a simple dinner, the two began to curl up on the straw bed, covered with patchy quilts. Big brother, do zombies really exist? Just when Luo Hao intends to take advantage of the remaining temperature after filling his stomach and sleep for a while, Xiaoying not far away poked a head out and said to Luo Hao, "What's the matter? Asking this kind of question again, did you hear any rumors in Aunt Liu's shop again?" A smile appeared on the corner of Luo Hao's mouth, and he didn't pay much attention to what Xiaoying said. In this world, although Luo Hao is a relatively low-level figure in society, he has occasionally heard these legends about zombies and water ghosts. However, Luo Hao didn't care too much. After all, Luo Hao was a person in the scientific age of life in his previous life. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, I wouldn't believe in monsters at all. Yes, when I was working in Aunt Liu's shop today, several aunts have been talking about it, saying that there is a family in the East, and many people have been sucked into people. The aunts said it was zombies at work. Xiaoying said. There was also a frightened expression in her eyes. For her immature mind, this kind of thing is enough to make her scared to sleep at night. Feudal superstition kills people. What do a group of adults usually say to a child? Luo Hao sat up, with a touch of helplessness on his face. He couldn't help but spit out the ants. Xiaoying said in his heart. Go to sleep, don't be so scared. Big brother is by your side, even if the zombie monsters come over, Big brother will help you run them away. Luo Hao stood up, put the quilt on him, and sat next to Xiaoying. While gently stroking Xiaoying's hair, she said gently. Xiaoying also smiled and nodded. With Luo Hao's hand, she slowly wrapped her quilt and her eyes closed again. This is how children are, as long as they get some comfort, they can easily let go of the burden in their hearts. But Luo Hao is different. Although this body is only a dozen years old, Luo Hao actually thinks much longer than a child of this age. After selling the firewood today, Luo Hao knew in his heart that the firewood farmer is not something that can last a lifetime. Every winter, the price of firewood will logically increase in other places, but in this place with a wet season, the price of soaked firewood will be lowered by some unscrupulous merchants. Especially in winter, the fog on the mountain will not clear up, and the visibility is very low. Luo Hao has been trapped on the mountain for 2 or 3 days. With the help of the passing Orion, Luo Hao can return to the town unharmed. Since that time, Luo Hao has not dared to go deep into the misty mountains, so he can only pick up some firewood moistened by the mist in the outlying areas and exchange some copper plates for food and clothing. It can be said that in winter, even Xiaoying's monthly wages in the dye shop are more than Luo Hao's. Seeing Xiaoying's hands full of frostbite, Luo Hao's eyes also showed a little pain. We must find a way to change the current situation. Luo Hao sighed deeply and looked at the roof piercing the cool breeze. Ding! The binding conditions are reached, and the life simulator starts to activate. Just when Luo Hao was thinking about how to start to change the life situation of herself and Xiaoying, a mechanized reminder sound suddenly sounded from Luo Hao's mind. Before Luo Hao could react, a system panel appeared directly deep in Luo Hao's subconscious. Life simulator points. 0 mall, not open yet. Simulation world. No, do you want to start a life simulation? Luo Hao looked at the system panel deep in his mind, took a deep breath, and lost consciousness for a while. Yes. After Wei Wei lost consciousness, Luo Hao immediately chose to use Goldfinger to simulate life. The current situation is very difficult for Luo Hao. Although it is not clear what kind of help the life simulator system can bring to the current Luohao, Luohao feels that there is no better than the current situation. Something bad happened. Please choose your origin. After choosing to start the life simulator, Luohao didn't start right away. There were many different options deep in the subconscious. Choose 1, Kendo family. You came from a family of swordsmanship, your parents are masters of swordsmanship, and your family is famous for rivers and lakes. From birth, he has been sitting on top-notch resources, the foundation of martial arts. Because of their family blood, they are born with talents that far exceed those of ordinary people. Whether it is physique or wisdom, they are stronger than ordinary people. Redemption points, 1,000 to 5,000. Option 2, official family. You were born in the capital of a well-known official's son. Under the cultivation of Hushan, both body and wisdom are higher than ordinary people, and the choices are changeable. Redemption points, 500-3,000. *1. After another different messages appeared in Luohao's subconscious. Luohao can find hundreds of different options with a simple glance. There are martial forest families who can learn powerful martial arts, and there are also rich children from official families. There are ordinary farmers and farmers. It's just that the points needed for those very beautiful life options are not something Luohao can choose. In the end, Luohao's vision could only be fixed among the only options he could choose. Normal family. You came from an ordinary family, and your parents are hard-working and simple farmers. The host's birth and death are so ordinary, not worthy of any attention. Redemption points, 0 to 50. The host determines the origin of an ordinary family with a price of 0 points. Please choose the talent you need to add. The following is still the same as before. Luohao has hundreds of options with different talents in his mind. All are some expensive options, even the cheapest handy and meticulous, temporarily not the protagonist can consume. In the end, he can only choose to be an ordinary person without any talent. The choice is over, and the life simulation officially begins. After Luohao chose, as soon as the voice of the system ended, Luohao felt that the whole person felt a deep sense of fatigue. Tiger baby, the simulation world is starting. In the darkness where no fingers could be seen, Luohao's consciousness began to wake up gradually. When Luohao recovered completely and opened his eyes, he found that the surrounding environment had changed. The bed covered with straw under the original itself has disappeared, and replaced by a wooden bed. It is padded with thick and warm cotton wool, and covered with the quilt Luohao needs most in winter. It wasn't the bitter cold that came with it as in the previous world. It's a kind of warmth that has long been absent in winter. The child's body. Is this a life simulator? So real? Luohao sat up from the bed and found that his body had become the appearance of a 5 or 6-year-old child. Some memory fragments that were not originally owned by Luohao began to flash like a revolving lantern in Luohao's mind. Is the tiger baby awake? Come and have some hot soup. Dad and Niang have gone to the ground. A thin girl outside the house opened the wooden door and walked in. From the water stains on the cuffs and the girl's frozen hands, it can be seen that the girl has just finished washing her clothes. This girl is in the memory of Luohao's current body, tiger baby's second sister, Lu Ying. Luohao is currently in the family. Both parents are well-earned farmers. Big sister Lu Bao occasionally goes to large families outside the village to help with work, while the second sister does housework at home and takes care of Luohao. By the way, after receiving the steaming cabbage tofu soup in Lu Ying's hand, Luohao was not afraid of being hot, so he drank 3 mouthfuls in 2. Although it is light, it is already very delicious for Luohao, who has eaten steamed bun soaking for a long time. Don't eat so fast, no one will rob you. I'll see big sister come back later, and said I haven't fed you for a day. Lu Ying touched Luohao's head, showing a touch of pampering in her eyes. For this backward era, the concept of patriarchalism is very deep. And Luohao is the youngest son in the family, especially the Lu family, and his wife are nearly 50 years old, and they are old enough to have children. I have a special preference for Luohao. The 2 big sis in the family are not jealous, which is also very good for Luohao. Second sister, did big sister go to the Chen's house next door to work again? Luohao finished the hot soup in his hand, handed the bowl to Lu Ying and asked. Don't worry, tiger baby, big sister said when she went out in the morning. I will bring you some ginger candy. If you don't want to sleep, get up and go to feed the chickens for the second sister. Lu Ying smiled and stood up. After talking to Luo Hao, she walked out the door. Luo Hao also answered, then got up from the bed and put on his clothes. When I walked outside, it was the same as the ancient villages seen in previous TV dramas. The paddy fields are filled with rice, and there are some simple wooden houses in 2s and 3s behind each field. Simply looking at it, Luo Hao roughly estimated that there will never be more than 100 people in this village. Since the system is a life simulation system, it will definitely not bring me over to experience life as simple as, there are malls and points in the system. Only with points can you get a better life simulation. Then how do I get those points? While grabbing the rice in his hands, he sprinkled it toward the chicken coop. Luo Hao's thoughts are not about feeding chickens at all, but about how points should be obtained. After all, this is just a simulated life, Luo Hao knows very well. Even now, compared to Luo Hao's own world, this place has a more peaceful and warm life. But Luo Hao understands that sooner or later he still has to return to the original world. Then he can change the status quo of life only through the current world. Forget it, I don't want to. First change the current world. Since you can eat and wear warmth, give him the greatest optimization in the current situation. Anyway, in the future, we will always change life for the better. It happens to be a try in this world. After Luo Hao had scattered all the rice in his hands, there was a trace of firmness on his immature face that he shouldn't have at his age. 10 years' time is coming in an instant. For life alone, Luo Hao's childhood was relatively moist. It is the life that a basic farm child should have. However, it was a few years ago that Luo Hao's parents had passed the age to be able to go to the fields. And because the harvest was not good, except for Big Sister who married a family in the neighboring village, Luo Hao's second sister, because the family couldn't afford the dowry. So this year is 5 years old and has not yet found her husband's house. I can only go to the field with Luo Hao at home to maintain the life in the house. Tiger baby, Yingzi has eaten. Luo Hao and the second sister Lu Ying, who were busy in the rice field, stopped what they were doing when they heard the call of their mother not far away. Brother, you go back to eat first, I will finish this before I go back. Lu Ying glanced at Luo Hao, wiped her forehead with the back of her mud-stained hands, and continued to bend down to get busy in the field. Second sister, so the sun is so big, let's go back and have a meal first. When it's late in the afternoon, I have to finish it when I come. Luo Hao looked at her second sister Lu Ying. Her skin color was different from the past, and there was a slight pain in her eyes. Although these years, Luo Hao can be said to be relatively happy, having a childhood that he deserves. But every family has hard-to-read sutras. Luo Hao's parents finally collected the dowry for Big Sister Lu Bao in the first 2 years and found a good husband's family. However, the second sister Lu Ying's dowry is a little indefinite. These years have been perennially dry, and the harvest in the fields is the lowest in the past 10 years. Not to mention getting Lu Ying's dowry, even in terms of life, it has become quite difficult. Well, let's go back quickly, don't let Anyang wait for a long time. Lu Ying picked up the sweat towel and smiled and helped Luo Hao wipe the drops of sweat from her eyebrows, pulling Luo Hao and walking towards the home. Different from just coming to this world, Luo Hao is 15 years old this year, and he is already a little over 1.8 meters tall. He has a dark complexion and a firm body gained from cropping in recent years. She is already much taller than her second sister. After returning home with the second sister, the parents of the two have moved out the bamboo stools and chairs. A large bowl of cold white porridge, with some pickles and fermented bean curd, started the day's lunch. During the period, Luo Hao's mother, Mrs. Lu, brought out a plate of steamed bacon from the kitchen, which was held in Luo Hao's bowl. Anyang, eat too, don't just pinch it for me. Luo Hao blocked the bowl with chopsticks, and distributed the pile of bacon that had accumulated in the bowl to Lu Ying and Luo Hao's father, Old Man Lu. Hua is a man now, eat more meat. If you don't have the strength, how can you grow food well, and how can you find a wife? After that, Old Man Lu silently picked up the bacon in the bowl and placed it on the plate, and ate the bowl directly aside. Luo Hao was helpless about this, and could only eat porridge with big mouthfuls. The second sister Lu Ying and Lu Woman are constantly picking vegetables in the Luo Hao bowl. By the way, Auntie, I don't want to grow food anymore. I want to go to the city and do some small business in the city. The crops have not been harvested in the past few years, and there has been a drought. When I go to the city to make some money, I will come back to help my second sister find a good family, and I will do my filial piety to you both. In a short while, a large bowl of white porridge was completely poured into Luo Hao's belly. Putting down the empty porcelain bowl, Luo Hao looked at the family in front of him. We are farmers, and we depend on this field for food. Your father, grandpa and grandpa are like this. There are so many cunning people in the city. How can you do if you are alone? Hua. Upon hearing Luo Hao's words, Liu's woman immediately showed a reluctant expression on her face, and she put away Luo Hao's bowl and walked towards the kitchen. The second sister, Lu Ying, did not express any opinions, but was eating silently. In a traditional family, an unmarried daughter like Lu Ying cannot speak on such matters. Although I was very moved by what Luo Hao said in my heart, I didn't dare to challenge On Niang. Second sister, you eat first, and I will go down to the fields to finish the work. Luo Hao stood up, not paying attention to his mother's objection, smiled and said hello to the second sister, and walked directly towards the field. Looking at Luo Hao's back, old man Lu didn't know what he was thinking. After drinking the porridge silently, he walked towards the house. Because of the drought, there are more things in the fields than usual. Luo Hao and the second sister Lu Ying have been busy until the sky is getting darker before they head back home. Dinner was simple noodles in clear soup. After filling his stomach, Luo Hao returned to his own house. After Luo Hao grew up, the Lu family built a small house next to Luo Hao. After a simple flush with well water outside the house, Luo Hao leaned against the head of the bed. Just as Luo Hao was about to sleep like this, the sound of Zixi Suoshuo's footsteps came from outside the door. Squeak. Luo Hao's door was opened by an outsider, and through the moonlight Luo Hao saw that it was his father, and immediately sat up. Daddy, what's the matter? Standing up, Luo Hao lit the candle on the small table beside him. Through the candlelight, he could see clearly the bag full of patches in old man Liu's hand. Your mother-in-law doesn't want you to leave home, but the man is ambition. Daddy knows the situation at home. Daddy doesn't force you to stay. It's a good thing to want to visit the city. This is the remaining savings of A Daddy and A Niang. It is always necessary to find things in the city. Old man Lu opened the bag full of patches, and a large string of copper coins pierced by a red string was passed to Luo Hao's hand. Daddy, Luo Hao looked at the heavy copper plate in his hand. Although there were only a few hundred words, it was the last savings of the two old men. Go to bed early, I have discussed with your mother-in-law. I'll add 2 eggs for you tomorrow morning. Let's leave after eating. Old Han Lu stood up, his palms full of calluses, patted Luo Hao's cheek, and walked out of the room. Luo Hao looked at the string of coins in his hand, and it took a long time to move and put the coins under the pillow. Boom. Brother, haven't you slept yet? Just when Luo Hao was about to turn off the lights and go to sleep, his second sister On also walked in outside the door. This is what big sister left for me before I left, and this is a little money left by my second sister over the years. Daddy and Anayang have agreed. It is better to have more money. If you want to be bullied in the city, you should come back as soon as possible. Lu Ying opened the red cloth in her hand, and dozens of copper plates appeared in Luo Hao's eyes in 2s and 3s. Through the candlelight, Luo Hao could even see the mist in Lu Ying's eyes. Second sister, Dad has already given me money. I don't want the money. Second sister, keep it. You can use it if you have anything at home. Luo Hao did not take the red cloth, but instead helped Lu Ying tie the string on the red cloth again. You kid, how come you have grown up now? You don't even listen to what the second sister said, right? Hurry up. Remember to come back quickly if you are bullied outside. Money is a trivial matter. You can't let my little brother be wronged outside. Lu Ying watched Luo Hao's movements, resisting the water mist in her eyes, pretending to be very angry, and threw the red cloth on Luo Hao's bed. There was also a little bit of crying in the words that followed. In such a big family, it is Luo Hao and the second sister who have spent the longest time together and have the deepest relationship. After the second sister Lu Ying left, Luo Hao took out the money under the pillow and the red cloth bag Lu Ying had left behind. Looking at the heavy house in his hands, Luo Hao felt a warm sensation in his eyes. The next day, Luo Hao got up early in the morning. Woman Lu prepared a very rich breakfast for Luo Hao, with 2 eggs added to the noodles under the broth. I'm afraid that ordinary people's breakfast will not be so good. After eating this hearty breakfast, Luo Hao took the luggage prepared by Mrs. Lu and walked out of the village. The distance from the town Luo Hao is actually not far from the village, it's almost like climbing over two mountains. In the middle of the road, Luo Hao has also traveled many times. Every year when the house purchases New Year goods, Luo Hao and Big Sister will go to the city. After going back and forth, naturally I became familiar with the mountain road. Second sister Adi and Anayang, you don't need to send me off, go back quickly. I know the way. When he almost reached the foot of the mountain, Luo Hao turned his head to look at his parents and second sister behind him, and said with a slight smile, Hua, remember when you went to the city, don't get into disputes with others. If you are wronged, come back early, don't want to face, you. No. Woman Lu grabbed Luo Hao's hand, with a touch of reluctance on her face. It was the old man Lu who was beside him pulling away the hand held tightly by the woman Lu, so that Luo Hao was able to withdraw his hand. Our son is older. It's not a bad thing to go and see in the city. It's not that my son won't come back. The city is not far from our house. Tiger baby, go. If you have time, whether you make money or not, remember to go home and have a look. Old man Lu smiled and patted Luo Hao on the shoulder, and at the same time motioned Luo Hao to move forward. Second sister, auntie, I'm leaving, and I'll be back when I make some money. Luo Hao nodded and walked towards the mountain road. Several people looked at Luo Hao's disappearing back and couldn't help sighing deeply. A month later, in a downtown street in the town, Luo Hao was pushing a wooden trolley into the street. A pot of boiling hot oil, one portion of tofu cut into small cubes in advance and dipped in starch. After being thrown into the oil pan by Luo Hao, the aroma of tofu being deep-fried began to permeate the street. Delicious fried tofu, delicious and not expensive, a loud call sounded from next to Luo Hao's cart. Many people who walked around were attracted by the unique fragrance of this fried tofu. Lined up in front of Luo Hao's cart. The boss has 2 servings, and I want hot sauce. It's so objective, wait a minute. Seeing the business coming, Luo Hao also showed a bright smile on his face. Very skillfully used long chopsticks to pick up the tofu that has floated in the oil pan. Then put on the peanuts, scooped a spoonful of special sauce on top, filled it with oil paper, and handed it to the person in front. One noontime passed quickly. Luo Hao's business is also very hot, crispy tofu after deep frying with spicy and sweet sauce. In this street, it is already a small well-known delicacy. After the noon crowd has passed, Luo Hao only started to count the harvest of this noon today. Oh, the boss's business today is also very hot. While Luo Hao was counting today's harvest, a few brawny men walked not far away and surrounded Luo Hao's car. It's good for Mr. Niu at noon. I haven't eaten with a few of my masters yet. I'll bring some fried tofu to some of you right away, so that you can cushion your stomach. Chapter 6 The Ordinary Life of the First Generation Tiger Baby. This is today's share, you have collected it. Seeing this person in front of him, Luo Hao immediately put a bright smile on his face. From the money box, he counted 30 copper plates and handed them to the brawny man Niu. This man is a well-known bully in this street, relying on a burly man and a few younger brothers around him. In this street, the stall fee is collected from the hawkers every day. In fact, it is the same as the protection fee, but with a nice name. Luo Hao was approached by them when he first came to this street to do business. At first, it was only 10 copper plates a day, but after seeing Luo Hao's business getting better and better, this amount has also begun to gradually increase, and it has risen to 30 copper plates since yesterday. This caused Luo Hao, who had a good income, to lose his income for a while. Although Luo Hao's daily turnover can reach 200 to 300 copper plates, the cost accounts for half of it. And Luo Hao's daily life consumption, there is not much money left in one day. 30 cents a day, 900 cents a month, is equivalent to 1 or 2 broken pieces of silver. If only the vendors on this street were as sensible as you. Don't worry, as long as you pay on time every day, you can do business here. Yaniu looked at the small string of hanging money in his hand with satisfaction, and walked away with satisfaction. And Luo Hao's original bright smile, after Niu Ye and the others walked away, immediately looked at the backs of them coldly. After dismissing these bullies, Luo Hao closed the stall early. The so-called strong dragon can't beat the local snake. Luo Hao originally intended to calm down, but this bully named Niu Ye was a bit too much. According to the current situation, it may not be long before Luo Hao will rise again. So as early as a few days ago, Luo Hao began to unite in this street, with the hawkers who have been bullied all the year round and dare not speak. Catch up the money to give a head catcher among the county offices, which can win the bully on this street and gain a good reputation. You can also get a lot of money, and you don't need to pay for food in the future by these vendors. The head catcher agreed immediately, and the only people who could bully the bullies in the street were ordinary people like them. People in the government, even if they have some friendship with the bully, look at these things with one eye closed. However, after Luo Hao has searched for people several times, he not only used money to clear him, but he also wrote an anonymous letter, accusing him of what he had done. After Luo Hao closed the stalls early today, the cowmaster and his younger brothers were quickly caught by the arrest of the county government. Go straight to jail, if nothing unexpected happens. Luo Hao shouldn't see this Niu Ye in his entire life. After all, even if the protection fee is charged, it is a bit too much. Many hawkers with better business have basically been bullied. If you make a lot of money, you will be exploited a lot. If you resist, you will be smashed and beaten up. This led to the fact that when Luo Hao organized all this, many hawkers strongly agreed, and did not hesitate to directly take out the money. Let Luo Hao take care of it, and use all of their relationships. One person's power may be small against these bullies, but a whole street of hawkers and merchants are united. Immediately let the new lord plant a big somersault. On the fourth day, when no protection fee was collected, in the streets in the original downtown, there was no sound of hawkers hawking for a long time. Instead, the town's yamen was filled with vendors in this street. 20 years after hearing the magistrate of the county said the sentence, Niu Ye and his party went to Zhengdong area to smash rocks. There was loud applause in the county office immediately, and all the vendors shouted hello while talking loudly about the justice of the county magistrate. As a magistrate, the most sense of accomplishment is probably that the people praise themselves loudly under the court. The grandfather of the county couldn't help showing a smile, and directly issued the same verdict on the little brothers around the bully. In the second year, Luo Hao's business started formally, starting from a small trolley. When I opened a fried tofu shop in the street market, my income started to double. At the same time, 2 guys were recruited as helpers, which is already considered a famous delicacy in this street. In the 4th year, Luo Hao saved some money and bought a small courtyard in the northern part of the town. The place is very large, and there are green plants and 3 courtyards in the courtyard. In the same year, I took my parents and my second sister from the village to the city. By the way, I also brought Luo Hao big sister's family. Luo Hao's brother-in-law and big sister also started to help Luo Hao with work. In the 5th year, Luo Hao found a husband's house in the city for his second sister. Although the family was mediocre, he looked good to Lu Ying. Luo Hao also prepared a generous dowry for his second sister. In the 6th year, Luo Hao's father was infected with tuberculosis due to years of hard work. In this world where medical equipment is not well developed, he passed away within a year. In the 8th year, Luo Hao's business in the city grew more and more. There were Luo Hao branches in the east, west, north, south, and also took over a restaurant in the center of the city. The hawker merchants in the original downtown streets were united to form a chamber of commerce. The business began to grow bigger and bigger, and it became a famous merchant in the city. The Lu family also became a big family in the city in a short time. In the 9th year, Luo Hao's mother was seriously ill, and Luo Hao married a young lady from a family in the city. In the 10th year, Luo Hao's mother passed away, and Luo Hao's wife gave birth to a boy in the same year. 45 years later, Luo Hao is 70 years old this year, and today is the 70th birthday of the old man of the Lu family, as everyone in the city knows. The entire Lu mansion was covered with red light paintings, and brightly dressed people continued to walk in towards Liu's house carrying gifts. For decades, Luo Hao did not just do business. In my leisure time, I also learned some martial arts for self-defense and physical fitness from the takeover of the nursing home. With the growth of offspring and the renames from Master Lu to Das Han Lu, the reputation of the Lu family is as strong as that of Luo Hao. Harden up, no one in the whole town does not know Master Lu. Luo Hao, who is already 70-year-old, is still in high spirits. For other 70-year-olds, now they need a crutches to walk. However, Luo Hao has a strong step and his eyes are enlightened. Seeing the offspring who knelt down in front of him to wish him birthday, the gray-haired Luo Hao nodded slightly. In an instant, 10 years passed. One night, as the caller's voice fell, Luo Hao fell asleep, and heard a crisp sound in his mind. Tiger baby, the simulation is over. Starting liquidation. Hearing the system's prompt tone, Luo Hao's consciousness immediately felt a blur, and when he came back to his senses again, Xiaoying lying next to her has fallen asleep. Without waiting for Luo Hao to think, the voice of the system in his mind sounded again. The host's life should have been mediocre, but with the host's efforts, many people's life trajectories have been changed, and some people who had nothing to do with the host have changed. The host's reputation is like thunder in a town and is sought after by local residents. The host's children and grandchildren are full of support in the eyes of the family. Congratulations to the host for successfully changing a farmer's life by relying on own. Final evaluation, SS finally earned points. 1000 points. The system store has been activated. Looking at the system panel in the subconscious mind, Luo Hao also came back to his senses. After decades of Sim's life, Luo Hao felt a little fascinated at the beginning. However, seeing the points finally obtained, Luo Hao's mouth couldn't help but raised slightly. Consuming points, the host can extract items, cultivation technique, talents, skills, bloodlines that the host has touched in the simulated world. Just as Luo Hao was happy in his heart, the voice of the system sounded again. Luo Hao couldn't help but feel happy again, although in the world of Tiger Baby, Luo Hao's background was very humble. But relying on own efforts, he became a businessman of the rich side, and by chance, he also got some good things. Thinking of this, Luo Hao immediately opened the system store. Solid wood furniture, the price is 10 points. Good sandalwood, the price is 10 points. Physique enhancement, the price is 50 points. Proficient in body refining boxing, the price is 100 points. Peak period chi and blood, price 150 points. Looking at hundreds of options in the store, Luo Hao finally found only 3 things in it. Body refining. Mastery, the price is 100 points. At its peak, the price is 150 points. 12 pieces of silver, the price is 20 points. After careful consideration, Luo Hao chose these 3 things. Tiger Baby. In the world, Luo Hao's biggest gain is probably the bodybuilding fist he got from a guard who fell in his family. Although the physical training boxing does not have any lethality, even in the martial arts world, it is the most basic fist technique. But fortunately, it is practical. As far as practitioner is concerned, Luo Hao has a trace of yearning in his heart. Luo Hao has seen the power of this exercise boxing. The skin is polished first, the bones are refined, and after the body training boxing is completed, it is not only vitality and physical quality that are added. It is not an exaggeration to say that fists can crush stones. Luo Hao clearly knows that when a bodybuilding fist becomes successful, a fist hits a person like a big stone. The bones can be beaten in one fell swoop. As for chi and blood, even though he couldn't make his own strength very strong in a short period of time, but in fact, it is the foundation that supports Luo Hao's martial arts practice. Although body training boxing is proficient, it is only about the way of using body training boxing and muscle memory. For Luo Hao to have the chi and blood in this peak period, I am afraid that his body will change a lot in a short period of time. Luo Hao does not need to buy a lot of chi and blood enhancing things to prepare for body training. After a complete life, Luo Hao knows that human nature is sinister. Luo Hao is no better than his previous life. When he wants to change his current life, his own change is the most important. 12 taels of broken silver is also a huge sum of money for Luo Hao at present. If you are getting more discovered by some caring people, it will cause trouble to the upper body, but it will harm him and Xiaoying. Although the situation is improving, Luo Hao still feels that there is always nothing wrong with being cautious. The tree attracts the wind. Luo Hao still knows that the purpose of taking out a dozen pieces of silver is just to improve life. Take Xiaoying to do some small business, and change to a place where you can see. When my bones and fists hardened, I was thinking about further things. Ding! Successfully exchanged for the host. A total of 270 points are consumed. As the system's prompt sound fell, Luo Hao felt a warm airflow all over his body. Flowing around in Luo Hao's body, Luo Hao couldn't help but groan softly. At the same moment, Luo Hao felt the strength in his body begin to ascension quickly. When the airflow in the body gradually dissipated, Luo Hao felt that the power in his body had increased a lot. The cold wind blowing in from the hole in the house also made Luo Hao not feel as cold as before. The warmth in his bones made Luo Hao feel a little tired in this cold night. After helping Xiaoying cover the quilt, Luo Hao stood up and walked to the bed next door, covering it with the patched quilt. For the first time in winter, I felt warm and fell asleep. The next day, Luo Hao got up early in the morning, after calling Xiaoying. Instead of cutting firewood in the cold wind as usual, he turned around near residential houses in the north of the town. After a whole morning, Luo Hao chose a small courtyard close to Xiaoying dye workshop, signed a lease as their new home. Although it is a small courtyard, there is also a one-person high mud wall and a large wooden door outside. Although the house inside is not big, it is definitely enough for a family of 3, with 2 wooden beds and some basic furniture. The rent for 1 month is 1 or 2 pieces of silver, and Luo Hao directly paid the rent for 3 months. Go to Textile Street to buy some cotton wool and a thick quilt, and then make 2 clothes. Prepare for the winter. When the purchases are over, Xiaoying should be almost off work. Seeing the simple and neat display in the room, Luo Hao nodded in satisfaction. After that, he walked outside, preparing to go to the street specializing in selling textiles, to prepare winter clothes and some bedding. After all, I still have a little money on hand, and I can't live an unbearable winter like last year. The location of Textile Street is just north of the town, not far from Luo Hao's new home. Just walk across a stone bridge to the opposite bank. After bargaining with the boss for a long time to buy 2 thick quilts and cotton wool, Luo Hao took the cotton wool on his back and walked on the way back. When he walked to the edge of the stone bridge, the crowd on the opposite side caught Luo Hao's attention. This is the first one this year. You said it would fall into the river. This kid seems to be the youngest son of the owner of the soy sauce shop next to him, so pitiful. Who would say no? Every year when that winter comes, the water monkeys will come to the city to find some young strong men to suck blood. In the future, I still have to come out less at night. It was only 2 days after I disappeared, and the person became like this. After returning from the first simulation world, although Luo Hao's physical fitness has not become much stronger with the help of qi and blood, but it's still pretty good among people of the same age, and my eyesight and hearing have also gained a bit of ascension. Standing on the stone bridge and looking down from the height, Luo Hao also saw what people said was the youth who sucked up adult work. The bluish-white face, the whole person's face seemed to have no flesh at all, and the skin of the whole face was close to the bones of the face. Wearing thick clothes, Luo Hao can't see the wound, but as a common sense, if deist is drowned and died, his body will be swollen due to blisters in a short time. But the death person in front of him is as if there is no flesh and blood in his body, just like a frustrated ball. Thinking of the residents in front of him, Luo Hao couldn't help but look at the big river that leads to the center of the city under the stone bridge. Suddenly Luo Hao felt a strange sensation in his heart, and then he couldn't help but look at the water plants close to the river dam. When Luo Hao took a closer look, among the green water plants, there was a green eyeball. But after Luo Hao's blink of an eye, when he took a closer look, the pair of weird green lights had disappeared. Is it wrong? Luo Hao couldn't help feeling a little drumming in his heart, shook his head and walked under the stone bridge. All the way back home, he spread the new sheets and bedding on the 2 beds, and walked directly to the tailor shop in the street next to him. After making a gesture with the boss about Xiaoying's height and figure, she paid the deposit and was told that she would get it 3 days later. Luo Hao took a new set of clothes on the spot in the shop, and now there are still 3 to 2 pieces of silver and 500 cents left. After taking the remaining 500 yuan and buying some daily necessities, the copper basin, firewood, rice, oil, salt, sauce, vinegar, and tea were all ready. Luo Hao returned home. It should be almost done this way, and nothing is needed. Luo Hao wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, and a little smile appeared on his face. Originally, I could only eat steamed bun every day, but occasionally it is a luxury to go to a stall and eat a bowl of white noodles with sauerkraut. But today Luo Hao came back with a whole bag of rice and bought a piece of fat and thin pork from the pork shop. The so-called improvement of life, it is necessary to start with food. In this world, Luo Hao of life no longer remembers when he ate meat last time, and he has forgotten what kind of taste meat is. Now that I have money, I definitely can't eat steamed bun every day, even if I can't eat big fish and meat. However, Luo Hao still wants to maintain the standard of ordinary people. After placing the life supplies bought from the market in the room and kitchen, Luo Hao walked outside. Walking to the door of a dyeing workshop, there are rows of eye-catching colored silk cloth hanging above. A unique smell from the dye workshop reached Luo Hao's nose. The door of the dyeing workshop was not closed. Luo Hao walked in directly. What you see is all kinds of fabrics that are drying and drying. On the sides, many women wear wooden poles and put all kinds of silk fabrics into the big dyeing vat. Xiaoying was also among them, but because of her height, she was stepping on a big rock at this time, trying her best to move her body towards the top of the dye vat, using her small hands to press the silk cloth that came out into the dye vat. Luo Hao pulled up his sleeves and walked to Xiaoying's side with a smile. Help Xiaoying press the fabric into the dyeing vat. Big brother, why are you here? Xiaoying looked at Luo Hao with a bright smile on her face. I think you should be off work soon, so I will pick you up early. Luo Hao pressed the silk cloth, and the paint in the dyeing tank floated onto Luo Hao's face because of the squeezing of the big bamboo stick above. Yo, Luo Hao is here, then Xiaoying will go back early today. There's not much life left anyway. While Luo Hao was helping Xiaoying with her work, an ant in a cotton-padded coat walked over and pulled Xiaoying directly off the stone. Sixth ant, let's go. Ahead unceremoniously. When Luo Hao saw the visitor, there was a smile on his face, and he greeted the woman in front of him. This sixth ant is a well-known benevolent person in the northern streets. The dye workshops are all women whose life is not prosperous at home come to work. During the new year, some waste fabrics will be used to make clothes and give them to the people in the slums. The clothes Luo Hao and Xiaoying wore were given by the sixth ant. Go, give Xiaoying more good things when you have time. Look at this child who is thin. The sixth ant waved her hand to the two, said with a smile, and motioned for the two to go quickly. Luo Hao is not welcome, holding Xiaoying's little hand that has become cold because of soaking in the fuel, and walks outside. Huh? The big brother family is in this direction. Xiaoying took Luo Hao's hand and just hit the fork in the street. On the left is their original residence, and on the right is the new residence prepared by Luo Hao. Seeing Luo Hao leading himself to the right, his face was immediately puzzled. Big brother, I rented a new house on the street next to the market. We won't have to live in a slum street in the future. Luo Hao looked at the expression on Xiaoying's face, and immediately realized that he hadn't told Xiaoying about moving. Then I told Xiaoying what Luo Hao did today. Then we don't need to sleep in straw beds or cover the quilt we picked up. And is there any pork to eat at night? Really? After listening to Luo Hao's words, Xiaoying immediately jumped up and down happily. Luo Hao just smiled and nodded when he saw this. Luo Hao felt happy from the bottom of his heart that he could change the life environment of the two of them. In this way, Luo Hao took Xiaoying's hand along the way and walked towards the new home. After arriving at her new home, Xiaoying was also excited for a long time before calming down. Especially the wooden bed like a normal girl, although simple. But the warm bedding on it made Xiaoying hugged for a long time. Until Luo Hao took the rice from the kitchen to cook, Xiaoying stood up reluctantly. From the corner of the living room, I picked up the brooms and started cleaning the new home. Although Luo Hao thought the new home was relatively clean when it was delivered to Luo Hao. But girls, after moving to a new house, they always feel uncomfortable if they don't do something. After sweeping the floor, Xiaoying began to wipe the wooden table and bench with a rag. It was not until Luo Hao brought in a large bowl of white rice that Xiaoying began to put down the things in her hands. White rice? Did Big Brother cook white rice today? Xiaoying sat on the table with a look of excitement. White rice was quite luxurious for them. Didn't I tell you a long time ago, there is also braised pork. I'll bring it here now, wait a minute. Luo Hao smiled and rubbed Xiaoying's hair, and then quickly walked towards the kitchen. After pouring the braised pork from the iron pan, Luo Hao couldn't help but put his face in front of the bowl and sniffed it with the tip of his nose. A strong smell of meat accompanied by white sugar and soy sauce made Luo Hao immediately couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of water. Carrying the meat and a plate of green vegetables, he walked towards the living room. As soon as the braised pork was on the table, Xiaoying immediately exclaimed, and she couldn't help but prepare to pick up a piece of chopsticks. But immediately put the chopsticks back. Why take it back? Eat it. It won't taste good when it gets cold later. Seeing Xiaoying, who seemed to have done something wrong in front of him, Luo Hao couldn't help but laugh. Let's wait for Big Brother to eat first. Xiaoying smiled slightly and put the largest piece of meat in the bowl into Luo Hao's bowl. He first caught the vegetables next to him. Luo Hao smiled when he saw it, and swapped the vegetables with the braised pork. It made Xiaoying more convenient to pick up, and she started to eat with a large piece of meat. The two of them, who hadn't eaten rice or meat for a long time, watched the meal all the time. Even a small man as small as Xiaoying ate white rice in 2 large porcelain bowls. After eating, the two went to the well water together, fetched water and washed the dishes. Big Brother, why do we suddenly have money? I have money to buy meat, rice, rent a house, buy bedding. In the middle of washing the dishes, Xiaoying seemed to have forgotten something. She looked at Luo Hao in front of her and said, I met a rich man who was lost on the mountain yesterday, and I took him out by the way. They found me today and gave me a dozen or so pieces of silver as a thank you. There is still a little piece of silver left. When that happens, we will set up a small stall near the downtown area to do some business. Xiaoying doesn't need to be in the winter, so I went to work in Aunt Liu's dyeing workshop. The corners of Luo Hao's mouth raised slightly, and he was already prepared for Xiaoying's question. She had thought out a set of rhetoric before, and Xiaoying would not doubt that Luo Hao was her only relative in her heart. No matter what Luo Hao said, Xiaoying would not doubt in her heart. The two people who had washed the dishes returned to their respective rooms, and there was no such condition before. And now that I rented a normal house, Xiaoying is also 10 years old, so it is better to separate the rooms. Leaning on the warm and soft bedding, Xiaoying fell asleep in a short while because of the warmth. Luo Hao was not so anxious to sleep. On the contrary, after the candle in Xiaoying's room went out, Luo Hao walked to the well and erected the horse stance. If you don't step up exercise, you will miss the best period of physical growth. The essence of bodybuilding boxing is to refinish the skin and beat the bones to strengthen the body. At present, Luo Hao's body is still relatively weak. If you start dermabrasion now, not only will the wound heal slowly, but it will also be completely unable to support it physically, so Luo Hao plans to go before the dermabrasion. Polish the basic skills first, start to practice the strength of waist and horse, and wait for the physical strength to grow up, then gradually follow up. Luo Hao, who had just walked out, could still feel a touch of coolness. The bones of the body have already felt hot because of the horse stance for half an hour, and the legs are like a shot. It was extremely heavy, but Luo Hao did not dare to relax. The blood in his body was swimming around when Luo Hao was about to exhaust. Vaguely, the sound of qi and blood could be faintly heard. When Luo Hao closed his eyes, gradually an hour passed. Luo Hao's shirt was completely drenched, and large beads of sweat on his forehead began to slide from his forehead to his chin, dripping to the ground. After a while, a pool of water stains had formed on the ground, all of which were sweat from Luo Hao. Using piling skills to beat the muscles, bones, and skin should have been accumulated over time, and there is no shortcut to go. Many martial arts started from a young age, accompanied by a good meal, and at the same time they began to exercise. They strengthened their personal qi and blood. Only when the qi and blood are surging enough, can the piling work continue to bring benefits to the body. For other beginners, even if their physical condition is much stronger than Luo Hao, they will stand 1 hour a day at most. There is still a lot of time wasted in adjusting the breath and concentrating calmly. And Luo Hao has the complete essence of bodybuilding boxing in the previous life, and has been standing for 1.5 hours so far. Relying on the peculiar breathing method of physical training boxing, relying on the post-exercise, nourish the muscles and bones with qi and blood. To put it more vividly, it is to strike iron. Qi and blood are hammers, bones and muscles are like iron. Thousands of hammers forge impurities, and hundreds of refined steels are made. After about a cup of tea finally passed, a flush appeared on Luo Hao's face. A look of pain flashed across his face, and Luo Hao's whole body fell back. The whole person sat on the ground for a long time, and Luo Hao couldn't get up for a long time. The legs were as if they were filled with lead. The heavy and tired feeling made Luo Hao both painful and enjoyable. He stood up, took off his clothes and put them in the bucket. In addition, a bucket of cold water was poured from the well and poured directly from the head to wash away the sweat stains on his body. Relax. After the exhaustion of the body was washed by cold water, Luo Hao felt a little more awake. The simple towel wiped his body clean, and with the moonlight, Luo Hao could even see the red light appearing on his body. You can also feel the qi and blood in your body, constantly swimming in the veins and veins. It wasn't until a wisp of cold wind blew that Luo Hao shuddered, and then hurried into the house. He put on a set of underwear and lay down in the bedding. It wasn't until 3 poles in the sun that Luo Hao was called to get up by Xiaoying. After eating some white porridge and sauerkraut, Luo Hao took Xiaoying out and made up some things that were missing in the house. Drop in and go to the carpenter's side and order a small cart. I plan to sell some snacks. Fried tofu is impossible to sell. The fried tofu store in this street is a bit small. Luo Hao plans to sell some small things like ginger candies or apple candies. Although the profit is not large, it can maintain the life of the two. On the next day, Luo Hao took Xiaoying to set up a stall in the downtown corner. In terms of business, I can earn 70 or 80 copper plates a day, and I can earn more than 50 copper plates after subtracting 1/3 of the cost. The next few days will be the same as before. Luo Hao will tie horse stands in the courtyard every night. Polish your muscles and bones until a week later. When Luo Hao was lying on the bed, he turned on the system without any hesitation. Currently selectable worlds, Tiger Baby, Gang Struggle. Hearing the system's prompt tone, Luo Hao looked at it and began to think. In the copy Tiger Baby, Luo Hao already had a very detailed understanding of the world. This world is a very ordinary world, without many characteristics, even with martial master and martial masters, but overall it is different from what Luo Hao thought. Based on the standards of Luo Hao's Ming Empire in the previous life, Luo Hao guessed that the martial master is divided into 3 stages in total. In the world of body refining masters, internal energy masters, Tiger Baby, Luo Hao can only come into contact with body refining masters. Even if there are internal power masters, Luo Hao does not think it will be easy to touch. As for the internal energy master, Luo Hao thinks it is impossible to exist. At least in the world of Tiger Baby, Luo Hao has lived for more than 80 years and has never seen a martial master who can use internal energy. Star.